Hello internet friends. Today I feel like I'm kind of going back to my roots a little bit. I have been kicking around this idea in my head for a quick minute, going out there and researching vintage clothing like I used to and seeing just how much the fashion industry has changed over the years. If you've been around for my journey for more than a couple years, you might already know that I got my start selling vintage. I have no idea how this video is gonna pan out, if it's even gonna hold any level of interest for anybody, but I have high hopes for this, and I think it'll be really fascinating to see how much companies have changed over time. And I think it might actually end up painting a little bit of a picture of what is actually going on right now in the fashion industry. Now, obviously, this isn't rooted in any sort of data or like a science experiment. There are one too many variables and moving parts. I do want to talk about the brands as a whole and take a look at craftsmanship and take a look at what type of fabric types they're using and just overall style of the garment. I think that'll be fascinating to see where the modern day brands are standing in some of the vintage labels that I pick up. I also think this will give me a little bit more of a chance to talk about nuance when it comes to certain fabrics and fabric choices, because you'll see quickly in a lot of these vintage pieces, synthetics are still being used, and I think this will give me a good opportunity and chance to showcase when it's okay and when it's not okay. With that being said, let's get our thrift game on and showcase some vintage clothes. First up, we have this Valentine for cashmere sweater. This is such a beautiful piece of cashmere. I was so excited to find this. I knew just based on the tag alone that it was vintage. That's something that I have picked up over the years, is like the moment you look at a tag, you just know. You know. I actually have some really old videos where I talk about how to identify vintage, so I'll link those below. I will say, once you feel good cashmere, it is very hard to go back. Valentine was established in 1921. They already owned a wool millinery. They were known for their tightly knitted design, which created more of a shirt-like feel as opposed to a like high pile sweater. You can tell it's very tightly woven, which just gives it a lot more of a, I don't want to use the term rugged. You don't have to be as delicate with a piece like this. So, is Valentine still around? Short answer, yes. Long answer, heartbreakingly no. They sold off their company in 2013 because of financial problems. Everything was kind of stripped down for parts. They ended up demolishing the equipment that was used to make these knits, which is even more upsetting because they were based out of Scotland, and I feel like the manufacturing and trade of making good cashmere is slowly but surely dying out. They did end up selling the company, and it is now owned by an Italian designer. If you look at the website though, they do still sell cashmere, but most hot takes online say that the cashmere just does not compare and doesn't feel the same. So that tells us Valentine, now owned by something completely different. The name still exists, but the manufacturing process that originally created Valentine and made it such a well-known cashmere brand, and arguably one of the best cashmere brands to come out of Scotland, no longer exists in the same capacity. Even Loro Piana at one point in time used Valentine as a fabric source. Next up, we have Jones, New York. Now, arguably, when I saw this in the thrift store, I knew this was a little bit more of a contemporary style Jones, New York. So I have found some true vintage Jones, but you know what? Sometimes you gotta take what you can get kind of thing. And this was long before the quality was stripped out of Jones, New York. I have very fond memories of shopping with my mom at the mall, and I know for sure that this used to be a really good brand. That was between Jones, New York, Liz Claiborne, Ann Taylor, you know, all those quintessential brands from the 80s and 90s. They really packed a punch as far as quality goes. Jones, New York was established in 1975 by Sydney Kimmel. Now, the brand itself has brought in so many different labels over the years. It actually really shocked me when I was doing a lot more research into this. Rena Rowan was launched in 1990. In 1998, they purchased Nine West Group. In 1999, they purchased Todd Oldham. In 2004, acquired Barney's New York. We're talking a pretty big portfolio. But by the time 2013 rolled around, they ended up selling to Sycamore Partners for $2.2 billion, including debt. Jones, New York, unfortunately became a shell of a company, but owned a ton of companies along the way. This particular dress though, I want to use it as an example because I would say this is probably pre-2013 Jones New York. I know that's not officially vintage, okay? Don't come at me for this. Vintage is 20 years or older. This is 100% silk and really nice actually polyester lining. Polyester can be good, polyester can be bad. This to me is good polyester. It feels very silk crepe-like as opposed to a very stiff, cheap polyester. There's a difference, trust me. There's a major difference. If you go on Jones New York's website now, at this point, they have maybe 10 dresses available for purchase. Nothing will ever compare to a dress like this. You just cannot find anything on their website that is remotely similar to this style dress. Nothing uses silk any longer. Everything is polyester. There's a couple pieces that are like cotton tencel blend, but everything is pretty run-of-the-mill now. This is a beautiful silk dress, and unfortunately, when you shop Jones New York, you just can't find anything like it anymore. I think the longer I do an experiment like this, you'll quickly start to see that a lot of those older brands that used to use really good fabric content just no longer does that anymore. From what I'm finding out over and over again, it seems to be that the company eventually sells itself for parts and we're left with a shell of what used to be. I think what really fascinates me the most out of a dress like that, I look at that dress and I honestly can see Doan or Reformation putting their brand on a dress like that. More likely Doan, because Reformation doesn't really use that nice of silk. I definitely look at that dress though, and I see a company nowadays stamping a $300 or $400 easily price point on that because of the type of silk that is being used. Those are the things that as a thrifter, I try and hold on to and retain that knowledge of where the value truly lies. Because whether you're in a point in your life where you can spend that $300 to $400 and buy a dress like that brand new versus go to the thrift store and find something of that caliber of quality, a lot of times it's just knowing what the differences are in the craftsmanship and hopefully a level of empowerment when you're at the thrift store looking at certain pieces. Next up is this beautiful guest collection piece. I was so pumped to find this because it definitely fits my personal aesthetic to a T. Guest collection, obviously, been around for years. This particular piece is most likely from the 1990s. Guess first opened its doors in 1981. The Marciano brothers started the company and they were doing really well for themselves for quite a while. I feel like this could easily be a made-for-TV movie because there was so much drama all throughout the 80s and 90s surrounding these two brothers and the company Jordache. They were known for their like sexy, scandalous advertising. You know, it was the 80s and 90s, the time of excess. By 1984, Guess and Jordache Jeans had joined forces and were manufacturing clothing together, but under the table, Jordache was stealing their designs. That led to a massive legal battle that I would say kind of disrupted the creativity of both sides. Jordache ended up losing. The Marciano brothers finally got the rights back to their clothing, but by the 90s, it had kind of ruined the company and they were struggling financially, which unfortunately holds true for so many of the brands that we speak about. This particular jacket though, I just love the cut of it. I think it is so well made. And if I am being completely honest, if this brand said Comme des Garçons on it instead, I would believe you. There is absolutely nothing on the website today that can compare to a jacket like this. And pretty much everything is made of some sort of synthetic materials. They do have a couple pieces that have a small percentage of wool in it, but for the most part, we're talking 100% polyester jacket. You might be wondering what this jacket is made of. 75% viscose and 25% wool. Viscose is rayon, that is a semi-synthetic fiber. This gives me more of the illusion of a worsted wool, like a very tightly woven wool. I try and talk about rayon as much as I possibly can because I really do think it's a good fiber for the most part. I think the manufacturing process is the hardest thing to think about when it comes to rayon. It's just not always ethically made. There's only a few companies on the market right now that I know of that make rayon ethically, but unfortunately the chemicals that a lot of workers are exposed to when manufacturing rayon can be deadly. I think the more research you do into rayon, the more you realize it's just a very toxic material to work with in the manufacturing process. The fabric itself is, like I said, semi-synthetic. So it's normally made of bamboo or, you know, some sort of plant-based material. Most likely now with the manufacturing standards that are on a piece like this, you would probably be looking at like $200 for a jacket like this, which is just, you know, mind-blowing. Next up is this beautiful Brooks Brothers pea coat. Is it vintage? Again, no, don't come at me for this, okay? I knew I wanted to include Brooks Brothers when I found this jacket, mainly because this is such an important brand, especially when it comes to furthering the fashion industry in the long term. I think brands like this are so important. Is Brooks Brothers anything like it was in the beginning? I'm laughing because no, because first off, it was established in 1818. They made suits for Abraham Lincoln. That's how old this company is. This one in particular, I would say, is probably manufactured within the last 10 years. But what makes Brooks Brothers so important? A lot of times with these heritage brands, they have archives of clothing that allows them to understand how the manufacturing process works. And yes, in some cases that can allow them to cut corners, but they know what works. They've done the research and they continue to do the research and vet their products. And you'll quickly notice a lot of the newer companies will buy up old vintage clothing to kind of strip the ideas and the patterns from the clothes. But Brooks Brothers doesn't need to do stuff like that because they are one of the like OG creators of said style. There's just so many elements that will add longevity to clothing. And I think Brooks Brothers is one of those companies that knows what to put into it to make pieces lifetime. Yet again though, unfortunately in 2020, just like so many brands out there, they did file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They're just another one of those companies, unfortunately, that was bought and sold. I do think this company in particular has a little bit of hope just because, like I said, they have their archives. They have so much research that's gone into it. I think the interesting thing about this coat though, in particular, is this is a mixture of synthetic and wool fibers. 80% wool and 20% polyamide. You're going with a company that knows how to put those little finishing touches on it. Now, obviously, I'm looking at this through the lens of somebody who paid like $12 for it. So please take that with a grain of salt too. Your money is how you perceive it kind of thing. So if you don't find value in a Brooks Brothers piece, that's okay. The most important part that I want to point out is the backing on the buttons. Now, is this worth the $200 alone? No, but they do double back their buttons. So they reinforce it with a button on the front and a button on the back. This was a very common practice like 50 years ago, and now it is just lost everywhere in the manufacturing process. The inside lining on the jacket is made of cupro, which is considered like the vegan silk. However, the manufacturing process is a lot like rayon. The manufacturing process is banned in the United States because of how toxic the chemicals are. If you touch it, it does feel like 100% silk. It feels so nice to the touch, but most lining is going to be a synthetic polyester. So you have the cupro lining, you have the backed buttons, but you're still getting that signature quality as far as the investment goes. So I think that's why I believe Brooks Brothers is still such an important brand. There's just so much knowledge that they have kind of hidden in their little vaults. This next one is probably going to come as a little bit of a surprise that I even thrifted this. This is a Forever 21 micro mini skirt. No, you're not gonna get a try on this one. Maybe when I first started this channel, I would have considered this, but you know what? At this point in my life, I'm gonna do a hard pass. Now, it might be a very tiny amount of fabric, but you're gonna be so surprised when you see what this is made of. This is 60% wool and 40% polyester. Yes, you heard me right. At one point in time, Forever 21 was using wool in their stores. There is no chance that you can find anything in their stores now that is manufactured using wool. When you search wool on the website, literally bikinis come up. If you look closer, you can do wool coat. Okay, so there's a wool long line coat for $35. Wool long line coat, looking good, looking good. A wool coat featuring a notched collar. That's 100% polyester. How does that work? They did start in 1984, so they have been around for quite some time. They have always been fast fashion though. So have they always led with quality? No. After being a thrifter for so many years, I have seen so many different tag versions of Forever 21, but there was a significant difference in Forever 21 in the 90s and the early 2000s versus today. I mean, Forever 21 partners with Shein now. That's how bad it's gotten. They did file for bankruptcy in 2019, just like pretty much every brand that I talk about in this video. Now they are yet again a shell of what they used to be. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that in this video. It is fascinating though to see just how strong of a decline there has been in a lot of these brands. The very last piece, this Diane von Furstenberg DVF wrap dress has been on my bucket list for so long. Let me just tell you though, the moment I moved to Florida, I started finding them nonstop. There's just certain brands that are very regional. DVF was established in 1972. Diane von Furstenberg, that's who owns it. I think this is one of those fun situations of the original design was so well done that she just kind of kept reinventing herself over the years and coming up with new concepts and styles, but it was still at the core the same thing, and it was just tweaking it ever so slightly over the years. As far as I can tell, Diane von Furstenberg still owns her company. They did have some pretty substantial financial losses in 2020, just like pretty much every single brand that I talked about. This dress is from the early to mid 2000s. Now, a lot of the original wrap dresses, from what I can tell, some of them were polyester, some of them were silk. It really wasn't uncommon for brands from the 1970s to use polyester. In fact, some of the best dresses, arguably from the 1970s, were manufactured using polyester. Please don't come at me for the styling on this. You know what? Let's just zoom in a little bit more so we can get the full effect of the dress. No, when you commit to wearing socks, they instantly leave a mark on your leg. This particular dress, I don't think would have been possible without using polyester to create a shape like this. They are very expensive, but you can find good materials on a lot of the newer DVF pieces. I think she's made a lot of steps in research and just trying to do the right thing and lead with the right choices in her company, and I like to see it. I'm sure she's not perfect, but I think as far as all the brands that we've looked at, it is kind of nice to see a female owned business still standing to this day. This was a really research intensive video. I think one of the most fascinating aspects of this is seeing just how much some of the financial decisions over the years really kind of shaped the companies. I think I kept saying over and over again that everything's kind of a shell of what it once was. You know, it's kind of scary, but the American dream is to build up a company and then sell it and make a ton of money off of it. A lot of these legacy brands that we've grown up knowing and just kind of are registered in our head as like holding the best quality are often the ones that have been sold and stripped for parts and are no longer manufactured the same way as what we once knew. Kind of heartbreaking to see at the same time as just showcasing how important it is to support small businesses and the people who are really out there trying to lead with the best possible manufacturing options. Vintage will always have such a strong place in my heart, and I am such a strong advocate for thrifting because I think the majority of good quality clothing is in the thrift store now, not in actual retail stores. Unless you can afford like a $5,000 jacket. The good stuff is at the thrift store. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys are new around here, I might have a couple extra videos for you right here and right here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, also, what do you guys think of my new setup? Dude, it took me how many years? I'm going on a year and a half living here, and this is like the first time that I finally decided to build my own little like YouTube corner. Just gonna pat myself on the back for that. Hooray! Okay, bye.